What's up, everybody? Welcome back into an episode of The Lawyer You Know. Diddy's sentencing is happening as we speak, but because it's in federal court, there are no cameras. We are getting updates. We will talk today about the arguments the prosecution makes for a heavier sentence outside of the guidelines to make an example out of P. Diddy, and the arguments the defense makes, including a letter from P. Diddy himself accepting responsibility, saying he's sorry. Do you believe it? Will it affect his sentence? Because they are asking for a downward departure from the guidelines, much less time than would normally be given in a case like this. Will he be given that preferential treatment? And we're a couple minutes late starting today because we have a special guest we were not expecting. My dad is going to join us and talk about this federal sentencing in P. Diddy's case. Let's get to it. What's up? Welcome in. How's it going?
Hey, great. Having a great time.
Good.
Weather's a little cool up here, though.
It's very different from down here in Florida.
Yeah.
But so we have P. Diddy sentencing happening now. His lawyers are still arguing. Just to give people an idea, he was convicted on the Mann Act charges and then multiple not guilty charges on the more serious penalties. The guidelines on these guilty convictions are somewhere between 70 and 87 months. How long? Because it's not, I mean, that's bad. You don't want to go to prison for, 5 to 8 years, whatever that ends up being. But talk a little bit about what a sentencing hearing is like in federal court generally, and then how it can span from charges like this to very serious charges that sometimes have multiple day sentencing hearings.
Well, the sentencing hearing in federal court has phases. Um, the the first phase is the judge deciding what sentencing guideline applies. And I think we've talked about the guidelines before on your show, where basically it's a grid. On the left side is the crime, and the crime has certain numbers assigned to it. On the top is your prior record. So they have your crime, you have your prior record, and then it comes together, and that is a guideline range. In this case, the judge determined, again, they had arguments on both sides. The judge determined that it was 70 to 87 months is the guideline range. So those are the presumption of correctness. If a judge sentences between 70 and 87 months, then an appellate court presumes it correct. Now, if a judge departs, and the judge can depart up and the judge can depart down from that 70 to 87 months, and both sides are going to argue that there are reasons for departure. And the case law has some specifics, reasons for departure. So they're going to argue from what I understand, the government wants 11 years. So that is above the guidelines. So they're going to argue for an increased sentence. The defense, my understanding is looking at 14 months. So 14 months would be a substantial departure downward from the 70 to 87 months. So the judge determines first 70, 87, and now he's allowing everybody to talk about the departures and why the court should go below the guidelines or why the court should go above the guidelines. And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah. And sometimes these sentencing hearings can take days. Sometimes they can be short if everybody's kind of on the same page. But when you have this wide of a range where sometimes one side or the other is okay with the guidelines, sometimes, especially the prosecutor will say, yeah, we're fine with the guidelines. Let's just go with that. And it's just the defense arguing for a downward departure. But because we have the defense arguing for a downward departure to 14 months, which would really mean P. Diddy's going to get out in a couple weeks. And I believe there were reports coming out of the courtroom that the prosecutor argued P. Diddy had already started scheduling speaking appearances in the next couple weeks, assuming he's going to be out. What hubris he has to do that and use that against him. So they're really trying to argue basically to get him out right away. And the prosecutors are asking for almost double the bottom of the guideline, which is like 5.5-ish years. 11 years would be double that. I think they're actually arguing for more than 11 years. So right around double the bottom of the guidelines. So because both sides are making arguments for departures, that can make a hearing like this take longer than if only one side's arguing or if everybody agrees to the guidelines, obviously.
Right. And they're having a lot of people speak for P. Diddy. I understand all 6 of his children spoke. And then they're having, normally the judge will just allow one lawyer to speak on behalf, but in this case, the judge is allowing almost every lawyer, from what I understand, to say their piece. One of the lawyers that represents P. Diddy apparently really broke up and started crying when she was talking about what a changed man he was, and what a good man he was. And that's everybody, that's the theme here that we're hearing from all of the witnesses. He's a changed man. He's a different man. He won't be doing stuff like this again. So that's what we're looking at, is the judge being convinced. Do we have a changed man here? Do we have someone deserving of going below the guidelines? Or is he the guy that the government is saying he is, which is a terrible person who ruined tons of lives and has no remorse? And so obviously you have two different pictures being painted in the courtroom.
Yeah, and Brian Steele, aka Young Thug's lawyer, aka the guy that got thrown in jail for contempt for standing up for his client, is currently arguing on P. Diddy's behalf. But let's talk a little bit about some of the evidence that was presented from the reports from the courtroom in the sentencing hearing, and then we'll get to kind of where we are now in the hearing, which is the lawyers making their arguments. It started out, obviously, the prosecution gets to go first, but both sides are able to submit letters and things like that. And Cassie Ventura, one of the main victims in the case, did submit a letter, and it was similar to her letter trying to not allow P. Diddy to get out on bond, where she and her family are afraid as soon as he gets out, he's going to come for them. They have to live in fear for the rest of their life, basically. She's recovering from the abuse that she suffered at his hand, and she still thinks he has a lot of hatred towards her. Then we hear about the prosecution asking for Maya to be able to testify, which is a pseudonym for somebody that used to work for P. Diddy. That was another victim that she ended up not testifying, but potentially presenting that type of evidence here. We hear reports that P. Diddy wants to speak at a sentencing. Usually the defendant goes last after the lawyer arguments, after everything else has been presented. So I don't believe that has happened yet. Then we had the arguments made by the state, but before the arguments even started from the state, P. Diddy submitted a, what did you say?
The feds. You said the state.
Feds, sorry, the government, not the state. So before the government got to make their arguments, P. Diddy submitted a letter. I'm going to read the letter, and once the letter is done, why don't you talk a little bit about, because both sides produced letters, right? From victims, from witnesses, from friends, from family members. What is the purpose, especially on the criminal defense side, of presenting these letters in support of the defense? So while you're thinking about that, and we'll answer this at the end, let me take a read to P. Diddy's letter. Dear Judge, I hope this letter finds you well and in good health and spirits. Thank you for the opportunity to express my thoughts to you. First and foremost, I want to apologize and say how sincerely sorry I am for all of the hurt and pain that I have caused others by my conduct. I take full responsibility and accountability for my past wrongs. Why are those magic words, not just in any courtroom, but especially federal court?
Well, taking responsibility could be a 2-level downward departure under the sentencing guidelines. So taking responsibility is a reason for the judge to go down.
Right. And the government has already argued he doesn't take it seriously. He's not taking accountability. He's not apologizing for what he did, anything like that. So he is trying to combat that. And let me ask you this, in your experience, when criminal defendants do this, because they do that a lot, they do this a lot. And we'll tell our clients, like, once you've been convicted, if you still maintain your innocence, that's one thing. If you got convicted and you take responsibility, that can really help you in sentencing. How often, because there's going to be a lot of people in the chat, and you guys let me know in the chat, do you believe P. Diddy as we read through this letter? Do you think he is sincere? When we're talking in a legal setting, so the people in the chat are going to let us know, just as people in life, right? We judge the credibility of other people. Do we believe them? Do we not? Do we think they're lying? Do we think he's remorseful, right? You guys let me know in the chat. But in the legal setting, how often does a judge say, I don't believe you, I think you're lying, versus taking the words on a piece of paper as he is accepting responsibility, therefore I'm going to consider a downward departure?
Well, let me tell you a general rule. Generally, when someone goes to trial, judges don't really look at them as taking responsibility, because they require the government to go to trial, and they require the government to spend a lot of money, call in all these witnesses, and cause trauma to other victims who had to testify. So, on one hand, judges normally don't like acceptance of responsibility after a jury finds you guilty. What they like to see is acceptance of responsibility before a jury finds you guilty, because then you truly are accepting responsibility. By accepting responsibility now after the jury found him guilty, there's no liability to him to accept responsibility. There's no liability to him doing this. So judges normally don't take this acceptance of responsibility very seriously if someone goes to trial. Now, there is an argument. The argument is he went to trial because of the more serious charges
Exactly.
that he's not taking responsibility for.
That's what
And
I
if
was
it
going to
had,
say. And
yeah, and
and
if,
we don't know what kind of deals were made and if he had to plead to
right,
all of them and he ended up winning all the big ones and maybe saying like I would have pled to these day one, judge, if this is what they would have offered me and they didn't. So I do think there is a little nuance here to how this trial went versus some others that you're giving as generalities.
right. But on the flip side of that is he could have pled guilty to these minor cases before the trial. He could have accepted responsibility for them before the trial, and then just tried going to trial on the more serious cases.
But
Go ahead.
if you do that, now they can use that you are already a criminal with these other charges, and they can say it's true with these other charges, and it doesn't give anything to the jury to split the baby. So, I mean, judges, I think, do understand the legal strategy there of why not plead to this when you have those higher charges to where, it can be a situation where maybe there is more nuance than somebody who said, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. Okay, I did it to try to get a lesser sentence.
And I've gone to trial in situations where we've offered the government, look, in one case I particularly remember is the government charged racketeering as well as the underlying offenses. And we went to the government and said, look, you drop racketeering, we'll plead to the underlying offenses. The government goes, no, we're not dropping the racketeering. Let's go to trial. Go to trial. The jury found him not guilty of racketeering. However, the judge still wasn't very sympathetic to our client because he still went to trial, even
Yeah.
though we had the argument that, Judge, we only went to trial because of the racketeering.
Yeah, and it's not just judges that hold it against you if you go to trial. Prosecutors do too, which is just not how it should be, in my opinion. But
Right.
all right, let's get back to the letter. Um, this has been the hardest 2 years of my life, and I have no one to blame for my current reality and situation but myself. In my life, I have made many mistakes, but I am no longer running from them. I am sorry for the hurt that I caused, but I understand that the mere words "I'm sorry" will never be good enough, as these words alone cannot erase the pain from the past. Over the past 13 months, I have had to look in the mirror like never before. My pain became my teacher. My sadness was my motivator. I have to admit, my downfall was rooted in my selfishness. The scene and images of me assaulting Cassie play over and over in my head daily. I literally lost my mind. I was dead wrong for putting my hands on the woman that I loved. I'm sorry for that and will always be. My domestic violence will always be a heavy burden that I will have to carry forever. The remorse, the sorrow, the regret, the disappointment, the shame. I honestly feel sorry for something that I couldn't forgive someone else for if they put their hands on one of my daughters. This is why it's so hard for me to forgive myself. It was like a deep wound that leaves an ugly scar. What did you notice about that paragraph in admission from P. Diddy?
I'm sorry. I guess I'm a skeptic. Um, but I have to say, it sounds like he's trying to save his career. That he's admitting because domestic violence. I'm sorry for all that. I don't go a day without thinking about it. To me, I mean, I hope it's true, but I'm a skeptic.
I would say this is him admitting to things that he was not necessarily criminally charged with. These are the things his defense admitted that he did: the domestic violence and how he hurt Cassie, and how none of that rises to a crime that has been charged that he is being tried for here. And that's what he's admitting to. He has also already, recorded apology videos and things like that about this. So to me, it is him apologizing, but not necessarily relevant to the sentence of these crimes and these criminal acts. And there's more coming about what the defense tried to do that I don't think the judge appreciated in the sentencing hearing we're going to talk about in a little bit. I always want to believe situations like this. I always want to believe that he's changed, that this was the humbling experience he needed. I hope that it is true, but it is very, 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 very hard for me to believe as being true. I always hope for redemption, but I'm skeptical, especially in this situation. Your Honor, I thought I was providing for Jane concerning her and her child, but after hearing her testimony, I realized that I hurt her. For this, I'm deeply sorry. So once again, it's like, I'm sorry she feels that way is a little bit what that one felt like. Cause he's like, I thought I was just being great. And after listening to her, I realized that's not how she saw it. I lost my way. I got lost in my journey, lost in the drugs and excess. My downfall was rooted in my selfishness. I have been humbled and broken to my core. Jail is designed to break you mentally, physically, and spiritually. Over the past year, there have been so many times that I wanted to give up. There have been so many days I thought I would be better off dead. The old me died in jail, and the new version of me was reborn. Prison will change you or kill you. I choose to live. Every day since my incarceration, as difficult as my circumstances currently are, I have made the best of my time by reading books, writing, working out, or in therapy, obtaining the tools and knowledge to deal with my past drug abuse and anger issues. I have been putting in the work and working diligently to become the best version of myself to ensure that I never make the same mistake again. What are your thoughts as far as how much rehabilitation can you really show in jail as a criminal defendant, either waiting to be tried or waiting to be sentenced? And how far does that really go? Because we also saw this type of argument with the Menendez brothers who wanted to have their sentence changed and be able to get off, and they did all these good things. Then they went to the parole board. They're like, no, you're staying in. So how far do you think this can really go as far as in a year sitting in jail? How much can you show rehabilitation, which is supposed to be one of the purposes of jail, right? Punishment and rehabilitation. Not often does it actually turn into rehabilitation, but how far can this go in an argument and sentencing?
Well, again, I don't think that was very compelling. He did everything he could do, but there's still, that's it. I mean, he's got nothing else to do. But, he's sitting in a jail cell all day. He might as well do something. So you might as well read and work out. Again, not very compelling.
Yeah, I will say, I think this is well written and well put together and hitting the beats that a good statement by a criminal defendant should say. It does sound good. That's a compliment I can give to this, I think.
Oh, but Peter, honestly, I think
I know
do you really think he wrote this?
No, but that's my point. That's what I was trying to say without saying.
He didn't
That's
write
exactly
this.
what I was trying to say without saying. Like, I think this sounds really good. I realize that I am in a situation where no amount of money, power, or fame can save me. It's like, because he's probably tried. Only God can save me, as Tupac said. That's only God can judge me, I guess is what he said, and save you. My grandmother used to teach me that God makes no mistakes and that everything he does is for your good. I believe that a bad situation can be used for good. Although the situation has been the hardest and darkest of my life, good things have come out of my incarceration. For starters, I'm now sober for the first time in 25 years. I've been trying my best to deal with my drug abuse and anger issues and take accountability, as well as positive steps towards healing. One of the most beautiful things I've experienced is being asked by my fellow inmates to teach and mentor them. They wanted to learn what I do because did to become a successful businessman. I was inspired by their hunger and desire to learn information in order to not only set goals, but achieve any goal/dream that their heart desires. I started teaching a 6-week program called Free Game, title given by my fellow inmates, which I was able to have approved and sanctioned by the Bureau of Prisons. Now, that certainly doesn't sound like something P. Diddy wrote, but again, trying to do his best to show how rehabilitated he is and how he's already trying to help other people, right? I mean, those are the beats he's trying to play here.
Checking boxes.
Right.
That's a box. Okay.
Exactly. I don't just teach about my success, because this is important, but I also teach about my mistakes and failures, more admissions of his problems. It has truly been a blessing to do something positive in a negative situation. Again, I love this. I hope this is true. I hope this is what every inmate would do. And they have this change when they're met with reality. I hope that it is true. It's hard for me to believe, but I do hope it is true. It has truly been a blessing to do something positive in a negative situation. It has been beautiful to see the newfound hope in my fellow inmates' eyes. The most shocking thing was to see the unity and the peace this class has produced. As you're probably aware, jails and prisons are segregated places. However, in our class, we have Black, Spanish, white, and Asians all together in one room, learning, working together. We even have an interpreter for the Spanish speaking inmates. The biggest miracle that I've seen in this class is that we have is all of the gangs such as Bloods, Crips, MS-13s, Trinitarios, and 18th Streets in one room working together. I am so proud to say that since this class started, there have been no fights in our unit. This class has also helped me in my time of need and despair. Being able to do something good for others has also given me much needed hope. God bless me with this opportunity to help others, and I will continue to do so.
I've got to say that was a good paragraph. That's one of the best paragraphs of the letter. That really is something different. It's more than the average guy does. So he is able to show how he rose above the average inmate. So I got to say that probably was a pretty good paragraph.
Well, he is P. Diddy. I don't think if I
Right.
went in there, any of the inmates would care what I had to say. I don't think they'd ask me to teach a class or to tell them how to become a successful businessman. So again, that probably helps that he's P. Diddy. But again, he doesn't have to do that, right? He could have just sat in his cell by himself and talked to nobody and bought whatever he want from the commissary and have people come visit him whenever they're allowed to visit him or talk to him or whatever. He didn't have to do this. And he did. And I assume that they can prove that he did this. And so these are, good things for the judge to think about if the judge truly believes he's remorseful. I ask you for mercy today, not only for my sake, but for the sake of my children. God bless me with 7 beautiful children, 3 sons and 4 daughters. Their names, he writes their names. 4 of my children lost their mother as she tragically passed away. I am their only parent. I have failed my children as a father. My father was killed when I was 3 years old, so I know firsthand what it's like to not have a father. More than anything, I just want the opportunity to return home and be the father that they need and deserve. God also blessed me with the greatest mother in the world. My mother sacrificed her life and dreams to provide for me and my younger sister. She worked 3 jobs to make sure we had a roof over our head, clothes on our backs, and the best education. My mother's now 84 and recently had brain surgery. Despite her own health challenges, she attended my trial every day. I have always been her primary caregiver. It breaks my heart that I put myself in the situation, and for the first time, I am unable to be there for my mother when she needs me most. As I write you this letter, I'm scared to death. Scared to spend another second away from my mother and my children. I no longer care about the money or the fame. There is nothing more important to me than family. That's a pretty common paragraph. Everybody talks about how their family connection. And if they have a loved one that has some kind of medical emergency, we've done that too. We've absolutely had inmates with loved ones with medical emergencies, and judges do consider that as a reason to either shorten their sentence or let them out.
Right. But again, that's one of those everyday arguments.
Yes.
All day, every day.
I understand that one factor the court has to consider is deterrence. Deterrence for me and for others to ensure that no one follows in my footsteps and makes the same mistakes. For over a year, I've been locked in one room with 25 other incarcerated people sharing the same one room. In this room that I share, there are no windows, no natural clean air, no sunlight, and we all live in one room. We eat, sleep, use the toilet, take showers, and prepare meals all in the same room. The conditions that my actions have placed me in are inhumane. I don't tell you this for pity or sympathy. I'm simply sharing my truth and the truth of my fellow incarcerated people. We have no clean drinking water, and we boil our drinking water. We all share one washing machine, which is broken. I am surrounded by drugs and live every day with the constant threat of being stabbed or losing my life. Again, I'm not expecting pity or sympathy, but my time at MDC has changed me forever. Jail conditions, normal argument?
Normal argument.
Yep. Prior to being in jail, I took probably not as different of a scenario as P. Diddy was coming from for most inmates. I took care of and was present for my family. Being in jail and because of my conduct, I lost the ability to care for my mother and to effectively raise my children. I've missed my 3 daughters' proms and graduations. I've missed taking one of my daughters to college. I have lost the freedom to teach my 2-year-old how to speak, dance, play, or be there to console her while she falls down or has a nightmare. I started from nothing and worked hard to earn everything I had. But because of my conduct, I have lost all my business. I've lost my career. And again, maybe they'll talk about the speeches he's already set up. I lost the charter schools that I started, and I have destroyed my reputation and stained the reputation of those that work for me. I lost my being present with my family. Between all of my losses and lessons, I can state for a fact that I will never be in another criminal courtroom again. Another very common argument. You won't see me again, Judge. And I do not believe any other person would do anything similar from fear of similar punishment. If you give me a chance, I would like the opportunity to share my story with the people to prevent at least one person from making the mistakes that I've made. If he got out in 14 months, do you think that's a major deterrence for the crimes and allegations? Here's the point. The other crimes that he was not guilty of, just they can't come into play. So we're specifically talking about the Mann Act. Does 14
Well,
months provide enough deterrence for that, in your opinion?
well, I know what you're saying, but the judge has specifically said he's going to take into consideration all the testimony and all the evidence he heard in the first trial. So
It's not good for him.
right. And so if the world looks at this, the world really doesn't know what he was found guilty or not guilty of. The world just knows he was found guilty. So he gets 14 months. I just don't think it's a deterrence. Also, I'm not necessarily sure that sentences are a deterrence anyway. I don't really know if I really buy that argument that give somebody, there won't be any M's if people get life in prison. Well, we know that doesn't work.
Right.
So I think 14 is a little light only because people might think, well, gosh, here's a guy with a lot of money and a lot of clout, and he got a break that I wouldn't get. That's the bad part about it.
Exactly. I think that, well, I have a part that I want to talk about when we get to that in the sentencing, but all right. I can't change the past, but I can change the future. I know that God put me here to transform me. Since incarceration, I have gone through a spiritual reset. I'm on a journey that will take time and hard work. I'm proud to say I'm working harder than I ever have before. I'm committed to the journey of remaining drug-free, nonviolent, peaceful person. I thank God that I'm stronger, wiser, clean, clear, and sober. God makes no mistakes. I realize that this trial has received tremendous amount of global press, and Your Honor may be inclined to make an example out of me. I would ask Your Honor to make an example out of what a person could do if afforded a second chance. If you allow me to go home to my family, I promise you I will not let you down and I will make you proud. A spiritual reset and promising to make the judge proud, also very common arguments made in sentencing.
Every day.
Today, I humbly ask you for another chance to be a better father, another chance to be a better son, another chance to be a better leader in my community, and another chance to live a better life. I am writing this not to gain sympathy or pity, but to lessen my sentence. No, actually, he didn't actually say that. I'm not writing this to gain any sympathy or pity. This experience is simply the truth of my existence and has changed my life forever, and I will never commit another crime or a crime again. Thank you for your time and consideration, Sean Combs.
Yeah, that second chance argument is a theme throughout, I think, his sentencing from what I've read.
Mm-hmm.
Second chance, give me a second chance. Again, everybody says that. Judge, give me a second chance. Unfortunately, also people say, give me a third chance or a fourth chance or a fifth chance. But in this case, give me a second chance.
Yes. So talk a little bit about why, because one of the things the judge said right at the beginning of the sentencing hearing is a lot of material to review. So why do you, or you as a lawyer on either side, present letters written by other people as part of the defense? Hold on, I have a couple things. Let me see. Michelle said he's thirsty to get back at it. Not sorry at all. I think I'm in the minority, but I think it's good. I think it's really good, personally. I think it's really good. Just because it's good and or well written doesn't mean it's going to have the effect that he wants it to have legally on the judge. Buff Soldier said he is a changed man. Wait until he's back in his Rolls Royce and back on the throne and starts his revenge, which leads me to what is the purpose here of other people commenting on P. Diddy and how different he is and things like that. And also thank you to Netwoman, 50 Lawyer memberships. That's insane. Tons of new memberships today. But go ahead. Talk about the material that we present to the judge prior to this sentencing.
Well, you're trying to influence the judge. The judge is human. So you've got to try to influence him. You got to try to show, the side you want to show. The prosecutor is going to show the side he wants to show. One of the most dramatic, just as an example, I had a client that embezzled $6 million. He was charged with embezzlement, federal case. The case lasted, about 12 months. In that 12 months, he worked his butt off, sold everything he had, and reimbursed the $6 million he had stolen. Think about that. In 1 year, he reimbursed the full $6 million. Well, that had a tremendous impact on the judge because the judge then heard, here's a man who again, it was an extraordinary restitution, $6 million before he was sentenced. So the judge could have still sentenced him to a long prison sentence. He had no guarantees when he paid back that $6 million. He didn't ask for any guarantees saying like, judge or prosecutor, if I pay back the $6 million, will you give me probation? Sure, that's a buy and sell. That's not the situation. In this case, P. Diddy had a chance. And you know what? I'll bet, again, I don't know. I guess was he worth $300 million? He's got to be worth that much. You know what? The guy had said to the judge, Judge, except for my bare existence, I have sold everything I have. I've given it to charity. I've given it to domestic violence shelters. I have given everything away. When I leave here, Judge, I'm going to leave here just a broken man with a common existence, with just one house and just one car. But he's not doing that. He's not doing anything that shows he's changing his lifestyle. When he leaves there, he's going to have the same lifestyle as when he started. So we just have to rely on his word that that lifestyle isn't going to change him back into the man he was. Uh, again, the reasons, that's the reason. You want to influence the judge. You want to convince the judge. Judges, theoretically, are supposed to come into that courtroom at a sentencing without having made a final decision in their mind as to what the sentence is going to be. You know the guideline. This judge has what's called a pre-sentence report. Probation has done a total report on P. Diddy, his total life, his total history, his total family, his total health, his total finances. Everything's in the judge's hands right now. So all you have left is for the judge to be convinced he's a different man, and then you've got the prosecutors to argue to the judge and show the judge that this man is a bad man and he needs to go to prison.
Yeah, one of
So,
my issues is I don't necessarily think he's got to go sell everything to show contrition, but it is about being creative in showing you're changed. Because how do you prove you're changed without words? Obviously, you have to use words, but words are not necessarily enough. And a lot of times it can be real explanations that give the judge an understanding of what's happened. And like you said, you pointed out some of the paragraphs in that letter that were very different, that would potentially be different than somebody else to show that he's a changed man. But additionally, like people that knew him before and after, they could talk about it. Now his kids coming up and saying what a great dad he is and we miss him. That's not really helpful as far as like, is he changed because you thought he was a great dad before and what makes him a great dad? But really people being able to come up and really explain how different he is. And that's difficult. That's really difficult when somebody's just been in jail for a year because you haven't really been with them every day. So how can you really tell? And it creates a scenario where it is really, really hard to quote unquote prove that you've changed, which is why it's like, trust me, judge, I'll make you proud. You won't be disappointed that you did this. And that usually falls short of really pulling the judge towards your side.
well, keep in mind, this is not the judge's first rodeo.
Yeah.
I mean, he hears, who knows how many hundreds of sentencings a year, and he hears the same mumbo jumbo coming from these guys. I mean, so him convincing this judge that you're different, that you deserve a second chance for other people instead of other people, why you're special. That's the tough part, and it's particularly tough for a guy like I think for P Diddy. I know that I'm a skeptic, but I also think he has a particularly tough road to hoe because of the videos the judge saw, because of the lifestyle the judge saw. I think that he's got a particularly tough time convincing this judge he's a changed man.
Yeah.
And of course, by the way, of course he's sober. I mean, he's sitting in jail for 14
Yeah.
months. So, oh, I'm sober. Great.
Yeah. One of the things that happened that reports came out was that the judge referred to Cassie Ventura and Jane, another woman who testified under a pseudonym, as victims while going over Combs' pre-sentence report. Combs and his defense team had objected to Ventura and Jane being called victims in the report, but were overruled by the judge. The judge said that evidence shown at the trial and the pre-sentence report established evidence that these women were victims. It's not great for P. Diddy.
No. And by the way, the alleged victim number 3, from what I read, came into court and told the judge she was not a victim. So one of the people they alleged as victims, actually the defense brought in and told the judge she was not a victim, which I thought was kind of strange because that's basically all she said. She told the judge, I was referred to as a victim. I just want the court to know I'm not a victim. And then she left the courtroom. So I don't know how effective that was, but that was interesting, I thought. Uh, I think that one of the things that are going to be interesting is when we see when we see him testify or we see him speak.
Yeah.
That's going to be particularly emotional. But his lawyers are all really emotional. Apparently they've all come to love and cherish the man, and they've all found him to be just the most wonderful human being they could ever. I mean, they said that over and over again, which is why I don't know why the judge allowed all the defense lawyers to testify, but it's not my courtroom.
The prosecution argued for 135 months, so a little bit more than 11 years. And they said we need accountability and justice. And they said that Combs does not appreciate the gravity of his conduct and has not fully grappled with his actions. Then here's the comment I wanted to bring up now from the judge. He said the advisory guidelines suggest a sentence of 70 to 87 months. No surprise there. Combs also faces fines. The judge said, it's like in the middle of sentencing, that he did not see a basis for departure from the sentencing guidelines and said he will make sure to impose a sentence that is sufficient but not greater than those recommendations. What do you think about the judge saying that after the state had made some of their arguments?
Well, obviously, he's not looking at making an upward departure either. He's looking at sentencing him within the sentencing guidelines. And it's interesting that he made that comment about no reasons for departure, because I don't think everybody was finished yet.
Not even close.
So
Well,
no,
this report
so
came out at 11:26 today. Brian Steele's still arguing right now. Like, it's not over, and yet he tells everybody, I'm looking at 70 to 87 months. So it's like we kind of know what P. Diddy's sentence is going to
yeah,
be. I guess theoretically the defense could really grip him, but he's already read the letter. He's already reviewed all the material that's been presented, the letters from everybody else. He has seen the exhibit that they want to play here, that they're going to play later, of P. Diddy with his kids. So it's like, do we know the sentence? Is it going to be between 70 and 87 months?
boy, it sure sounds like he's sending a signal. And federal judges will do that. Remember,
They don't.
they're appointed for life, and
Yeah.
they don't have to worry about anybody being upset with them. They're not going to ever lose their job. Uh, I've had judge, and frankly I appreciate it. Sometimes I appreciate it, but most of the time I appreciate at the beginning of sentencing a judge telling me, for instance, Mr. Tragos, I just want you to know before you go into all this, I'm not sending your client to prison. Well, that signals, all right, I don't need to sit around and talk for hours about how great my client is. The judge has already determined he's not going to prison. Drives the prosecution crazy, but it sure saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like maybe that's what he was trying to signal to everybody here. Like, you can do what you'd like, but we're going 70 to 87 months. I know everybody's asking, it's like 70 to 87 months, doing the math is like 5.8 years to 7.25 years. So it's like somewhere within that range. M said, hey, P and Papa T, how much time would you suggest? So knowing that the judge is probably going to stay in that time period, what do you think is going to be the higher end or lower end of that span?
Lower end.
You
I,
think
I,
lower end?
I think lower end. Yeah. I don't think the judge believes the higher end's appropriate, but he believes the guidelines are appropriate. And he also knows that they went to trial. They lost the more significant charges. So these are the lighter charges. I also know that, and I assume they gave the judge these statistics, because I give the judge statistics like this because it is a legitimate downward departure. If you show the judge for similar crimes committed across the country that there were departures for da 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 da, you can get those statistics from the
Exactly.
Department of Justice. And I think that you don't have a whole lot of Mann Act convictions going around right now. It's a very rare charge to be convicted of. So I think that the 70 months is probably the appropriate one.
I think that it is absolutely the right decision by the judge to stay within these guidelines. This is not a case I would want to depart up or depart down on. I don't want anybody saying I gave him preferential treatment because he's P. Diddy. I don't want anybody saying I made an example of him because he's P. Diddy. I don't want anybody saying the media had an effect on this case, the high-powered defense team had an effect on this case. I don't want any of that if I'm a judge. I want the simple, straightforward, narrow road of 70 to 87 months, whether I'm on the top end or the bottom end. I can always explain that. like you said, it's assumed to be appropriate. You're not going to get overturned on appeal for anything like that when it's right inside the guidelines of this case and these convictions. It is, to me, a brilliant move by the judge. He announces it. It's easy. Don't become part of the case, right? Like we talk about in sports, the refs, we don't want the refs to be a big part. If everybody's talking about the refs on Sunday morning after the Saturday night game, then the game didn't go well. So it's like, don't talk about the judge. The judge is like, here's what's in front of me. I've reviewed everything. I think the guidelines are appropriate. And then he's got that span to go up or down, whatever he wants. If I was him, I'd probably go right in the middle. I'd divide that right down the middle, whatever's between, what is that, 80 or 78 months or something. Give me that. That's what I would pick, somewhere right in the middle of 70 to 87 months, just so I can be like, listen, both of you guys made good arguments. I can see arguments on both sides. Jury convicted him. My hands are tied with these guidelines. That's what I'm going to stick to. That's what I would do as far as coming up with a sentence for P. Diddy.
No, I agree with all the reasons you just said. And again, the only reason I say 70 is because it's the Mann Act. And nobody gets convicted. I don't know what the stats are on the Mann Act, but hopefully I think the defense team, knowing the defense team probably presented those stats, but no one gets convicted of the Mann Act anymore. So
Yeah.
that's why I go 70.
SVDS said, I think he's going to plead on his knees because he hates jail, but the victims deserve justice and not a life in fear. He is a criminal to the core. Have you ever seen somebody like get on their knees and plead with the judge? I have not seen that.
No, I've not seen that. I mean, figuratively, but not actually.
The WJP cited the inhumane conditions in the U.S. jail in this year's ranking. U.S. again ranked as by far the worst justice system of developed world, among worst in the world. Why do we not learn from our peer nations?
I'm a little, I don't know if that's the worst justice system or the worst jails.
Obviously, these rankings can be incredibly biased.
Yeah, I disagree with the worst justice
we have
system.
the absolute best justice system in the world, and it's really not that close. And I'll stand very firm on that. And I'd love to talk to anybody from any other country that says that, and how many other countries even know what goes on in their justice system the way we do in ours. If we're talking about jails, I don't know. I mean, we've
got some bad ones, and the Tombs, which is where P. Diddy is one of the worst in the country.
It's horrible. I mean, it's horrible. And there's one side where it's like, yeah, I don't want prisons to be a great place to live or anybody wants to go there. But I mean, there is such a thing as inhumane conditions, and that's not appropriate. Nicole said, hi, Peter and Mr. T. Just ordered my lawyer, evidence hoodie. Can't wait. Thank you both for your insight today. God bless. Yeah, I'm wearing one of my favorite merch shirts right now. I love these. They're so comfortable. And then Netwoman, another 50 memberships, 100 new lawyer memberships, all on this live, thanks to Netwoman. So thank you for that. Zach said 78.5 years. Yeah, that's what I would do. Somewhere right in the middle of 78 to 87. So then the defense argues for a shorter sentence. They talk about how he didn't make money off of the Mann Act, and relying on the sentencing guidelines can create sentence discrepancies compared to other cases. So exactly what you said, they're comparing it to some other cases and how this one would be unfair to put within those guidelines. And it's interesting, but that can be an argument to say even the guidelines are unfair based on what we're dealing with here, Judge. They also highlighted his success in the music and fashion industry. They're seeking a sentence of 14 months. They taught a class in jail, which we heard about in his letter. They made that argument. His children speak during sentencing, and then they play a video that was about 12 minutes long. And the video included short clips of Combs playing with his children, participating in community activities, and engaging in various businesses. It also showed others praising Combs as a positive influence, a role model, and a community member. Combs had his head in his hands and was hunched to the side while the video played in court. Let me ask you about that. How much of sentencing, because to me, this can have some, I guess, legal pull. I don't see a lot of it doing much with the judge, him like being a business mogul or whatever. But how much of sentencing do you think could potentially be to pacify the client or the defendant, to really try and make him look good so he enjoys the presentation, versus like legally what is necessary and actually going to make a difference?
Well, it's always important that a client feels like he's got his money's worth, that he got, the display of effort that he wants to see. So I do think some of this is for a display of effort for him, so that, he knows his defense team did. I mean, how much more can you do than get up there and cry while you're arguing? So I think that they're doing this to make sure that he got his money's worth. One of the things that, uh, well, that he got his money's worth. So I'll just leave it at that.
Then they took a lunch break, and after lunch, Brian Steele came. He made his arguments. He talked about his father, or P. Diddy's father, losing his life, the drug use, the death of the mother of his children, Kim Porter, the mother. And by the way, a lot of people side eye that and say they think like P. Diddy may have had something to do with that. I have no idea, but they've sure mentioned it a lot throughout the sentencing process. The mother of several of his children. Steele said that Combs was traumatized because of all this trauma in his life, reiterated 14 months. It's like every time they reiterate 14 months and credit for time served, it reminds you that it's like, do we really need all these lawyers making these arguments and repeating the same points?
Yeah. One argument I really did like that they made was this is not a typical Mann Act prosecution. Mann Act is usually the pimp who is making money and he's transporting
And not the
the
person engaged.
employee. Right. And so in this case, he hired an escort service to provide males for his entertainment. It's just different. It's not the kind of facts that the Mann Act, and that again, that's the possibility of a departure that looks like it's not going to happen. But those are the kind of things that judges look at is, are these facts different than what the statute was designed to combat? And frankly,
As
this stat it is.
Yeah, I mean, as gross and horrible as all of this is, I did think that his lawyers made a decent argument when they said he was almost like an amateur adult filmmaker because he paid people that were willing to come and be filmed doing these graphic acts, which is not a crime covered under the Mann Act. So I do think there's some arguments there, and you know, there's a million different reasons the jury could have come down at this, but legally speaking, it is I think most people that really want him to suffer and get the book thrown at him are including everything else around the P. Diddy allegations and not just the Mann Act. When will he be able to get an appeal bond?
Well, again, my question is he appealing it? Um, he can get an appeal bond just as soon as he's sentenced. Once he's sentenced, then the judge has the authority to do an appeal bond. But I'm not so sure that he's going to appeal this. I don't, especially after reading that letter. Normally, clients don't make admissions in letters after a trial. So, I mean, I think he danced around whether he was actually admitting to the Mann Act
Right. It
crimes.
wasn't a specific
Right,
admission of the Mann Act.
right. So he danced around that a little bit. But this may be a situation where they won't appeal. But it can happen right after the
I
sentence.
mean, I think if he gets 5 or 7 years, I think he might appeal.
Yeah.
And I actually think, you tell me if you have a lot more experience with this in the federal system than I do. If he were to get sentenced to 5 or 7 years or whatever, and he does appeal, I think the judge should give him an appeal bond based on the charges he's actually been convicted of at this point.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt. Yeah, he's these are not the kind of crimes that you don't get a bond on. So
Right.
the judge is going to give a bond. My guess is it'll be a reasonable bond. This judge has not been a unreasonable guy from what I've seen from the trial.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that he should get one, and that he's already been in prison for, a year. So, or in jail for a year. So it's like, I mean, at some point, makes sense. Will it be 70 months times 2 for each count? No. 70 to 87 months is the total sentence he's looking at.
Right. They run concurrent, which means that he might get 70 and 70 concurrent. So they will not be more than the 70 months or 87 months. And keep in mind, he will serve theoretically, and this is theoretical, 85% of that 70 months. And the last 6 months of that 85%, they usually send you to a halfway house. So, you can do the math on when he'd get out for a halfway house.
Dr. E said, Peter, Google the best justice system in the world. 1, Norway, 2, Sweden, 3, Denmark. I will just tell you, I don't care at all. That does not change my opinion at all. There's a lot of things that Google can be wrong about. But I mean, listen, it's your prerogative if that's how you want to see it and that's how people see it. And people like other justice systems better and want to go be subjected to them. That's fine. I like ours. It's just me speaking. Can Can other trafficking jurisdictions charge him? That's a factual dependent scenario that we don't necessarily know about. But yes, if another jurisdiction is inside the statute of limitations on different charges, they can still charge him for different things. I mean, that's always going to be the case when it comes to crimes, not under these specific set of facts and circumstances, though. In Switzerland, we don't have juries, and they can keep you in jail for years. They even indict you or not for M, and you get 5 to 10 years. I mean, listen, that doesn't sound good to me. That doesn't sound good to me, but we don't need to go through I don't know every other judicial system like I know ours. Why wasn't he charged for the violence, etc.? I think there were statute of limitations issues with some of the other charges. And then there may have been jurisdictional issues like where certain things happened. I'm not sure. I think they have talked about this before, and I don't know all the specific details and dates of every single one of the allegations. I don't know if you have any more to add to that.
No.
Megan asked, can Cassie and other victims get a lifetime restraining order?
I think so. I think so. I mean, I think they sued him correctly, and didn't he settle the civil
Cassie
lawsuits?
did, I know
with
that.
them?
Yeah.
Yeah, the civil lawsuits. So yeah, I mean, they can sure get a restraining order, but as we all know, restraining orders are just pieces of paper. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I would say I think they should be able to. I think that they would still be in fear even if they had a restraining order, because that's going to cover P. Diddy. But, as you know, with the Kid Cudi situation, and, I don't think P. Diddy's going to show up and do something personally. And he's got a lot of power and resources. So I totally understand why they are in fear. And I think it's a very legitimate fear. I think it's a perfect scenario for a lifetime restraining order personally, especially because he admits it. You got a letter where he admits it. The federal judge is calling you a victim of his crimes. Like, you got a lot there for a restraining order. Deborah gifted 5 Lawyer memberships. Thank you so much, Deborah. Currently in the sentencing, Combs's pastor is speaking. Reverend Gary Johnson, Combs's pastor, spoke at the hearing and said he believed in redemption for the former mogul. Johnson said he would consider himself personally responsible for Combs' spiritual rehabilitation. He also said that a longer jail sentence would not benefit Combs. And again, this may seem unusual, but we've had this happen before too.
Hey, what pastor doesn't believe in redemption?
As he should.
That's right. So
as he
no
should.
surprise.
What the chart won't say. Hi, Peter. I've been a fan for a long time, and you've inspired me to be a law tuber for my own specialty, medical malpractice. I launch in 2 weeks. Wish me luck. Well, what the chart won't say, welcome. Welcome aboard. I have a lot of advice for you that I could give you, not law related, but YouTube related. Have thick skin, enjoy it. Only do videos that you enjoy and formats that you enjoy, and talk about things you enjoy. And the people that like it and that enjoy hanging out with you, they will find you. They will come hang out with you. They may leave. It is okay. The great ones will always stay. And the chat, is evidence of that. I wish you really good luck. If you need anything, shoot me an email, lawyerknow@gmail.com. If I can give you any other advice, I'd be happy to. MedMal, very cool, very brainy specialty to be in. So I think that's really cool and definitely needed because there's a lot that people don't understand with how the rules work and how unfair they can be and how difficult they can be to navigate. So I look forward to that and to checking out some of your videos myself. I'm not sure if you covered this. Can he profit making music while incarcerated? I think the answer to that is yes. I don't see why not, unless that's a restriction put on him as part of bond or bail. I don't know. Well, he doesn't have bail. So unless it's some kind of pre-trial or post-trial restriction, I don't see a problem with that. Do you think he could get up to 10 years probation? I don't know what the probation is. Do you?
No, but he can get whatever. There'll be a 3 years of supervised release, whatever sentence he gets. So after he finishes the sentence, he has to also be supervised for at least 3 years.
Okay. Allie said, please give Big George a hug. I lost mine in January. Allie, I'll be happy to do that. We're in different states right now, but when he comes back, I'll be happy to do that. Amy said, hi, Papa T and Peter. Thanks for doing this while we are waiting. Love learning from both of you. Everyone hit that like button. Yes, everybody hit that like button if you have not already. We are going to sign off here in a couple of minutes. It looks like his pastor is still speaking. Last I heard, let me see. But I would think the judge would want to get this done today. It's a Friday. Don't you think they're going to want to get it done today?
Yeah,
So I assume we will have a sentence for Sean P. Diddy Combs by 5:30 Eastern time today. We don't have one right now, but I would be surprised at this point, very surprised if it was outside the 70 to 87 months. What do you think?
I agree with you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Nurse of Interest said, after a major loss, Red Sox, great recovery is legal commentary from a man who put the smackdown on Hogan, Big George. It's funny. R.I.P. R.I.P. Speaking of Boston, I wanted to mention something I'm going to do tomorrow morning for a Friday morning live. That's going to be really fun. I think we are going to do, because a bunch of people have asked me in the past to like rate and rank different lawyers from different cases. And we've done it kind of here and there, but never all kind of in one place. And as I was watching and listening to a fantasy football podcast at the gym, I saw they were doing this tier list. And some of the watch channels that I watch, they do tier lists where it's like S tier, which is like the best of all time, A tier, obviously good, B tier, C tier, all the way down to F tier. So I think what I'm going to do is tomorrow morning, the first group of lawyers we are going to rank on a tier list are going to be all the lawyers involved in Karen Reed's situation, whether it's Alessi, Jackson, Yannetti, Cannoni, the judge, who's also a lawyer, Brennan, Lally, everybody. We're going to do all of them. Yes, tomorrow is Saturday morning live, tier list for all the lawyers involved in the Karen Reed scenario. I'm sure there's going to be people that get angry and disagree with some of those tier lists, but it wouldn't be a tier list without that. I think it'd be fun. It's kind of a light way for the weekend to hang out. And a bunch of people have asked me that type of deal. People are saying Friday morning live. Tomorrow is Saturday, at least on my clock where I'm at. So make sure you guys are all subscribed and you hit that reminder bell so you don't miss that one. Why is S the top tier? You know what? You're going to have to ask the kids. I don't know the answer to that. A was always the top tier when I was growing up, but now it's very clear that S tier is the top. Miss Vicky said, was the pastor the one who attended the freak-offs? I have no idea. I'm going to hope the answer to that is no, but I have no idea. Okay, that's all we got, Dad. Thanks for joining me for the last minute. Also, be on the lookout Saturday or a Sunday night for our podcast tease, because you might be seeing a familiar face also on the podcast when we talk about there. But for now, that's all we got. Until next time, we are out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.